You can say you want more money, and you probably already have been. You can consciously believe that you are ready for abundance. But if your nervous system doesn't feel safe with more wealth, it will sabotage you without you even realizing it. In the past, my behaviors showed very clearly that I had blocks, even though I didn't recognize them until more recently. When I would go and pay for groceries or petrol, I would feel such a resistance energy in my body. Not because I was worried that it would decline or that I didn't have enough money in there, but because I didn't have faith that it would come back to me. And I think that's the trap that a lot of us fall into. We think because we're not actively saying negative things about money, we must be in the clear. I'm your host, Lauren, and together, let's explore what it really means to embrace authenticity in a world that often values conformity. If you've ever felt the pull to challenge the status quo or deepen your connection to self, you're in the right place. Welcome to another episode of Not So Status Quo. Yes, it is another solo episode this week because I seriously couldn't wait to jump into this topic as it feels really, really relevant to the conversations I'm hearing more and more around me. And I do believe that this is something that is affecting nearly all of us at some point, probably even likely now, and that is the topic of money blocks. This topic is very likely shaping your financial reality, even if you don't realize it. And not just the obvious money blocks that we all know of, that money is evil or rich people are greedy. I'm talking about the often very, very sneaky subconscious beliefs that shape how you feel around money and whether you can actually attract it and hold more of it. I find money to be such an interesting topic, and it really is fascinating how this one topic can make people feel kind of polar opposite sometimes. So, some people, it can make them instantly seize up and feel uneasy. And then in others, it can feel really exciting and expansive. I have a lot to discuss with you on this. So, I am going to do this topic in two parts. It's like a two-part series. Today's episode will focus on understanding what money blocks are, how these might be showing up in your life, and tapping into like where they might have come from. And then at the end of this episode, I'm going to give you a really cool activity to do. And then next week, we will check back in and we will go over the activity, what came up for you. I want to do a couple more exercises with you. I'm going to do an energy audit, and I really want to make this podcast and the one for next week, the episodes, I want to make them as practical and useful for you. Almost like a coaching session of sorts where you actually get to apply the practical things. And you know that I love to keep things practical. You know that I love to provide relatable examples in the episode. So this one is going to be no different. I've thought of lots of different ways that I can help you see if there are any money blocks that are showing up for you. And then we will go back to our regular programming. So we'll do the two-part money block series, and then we'll be back to guest episodes. I have a number of them that I cannot wait for you to listen to. All right, back to money blocks. So, I've been hearing a lot of people talking about the rising cost of living and feeling stressed about what that means for their current circumstances and for their lifestyle, as well as their future. And understandably, people are wondering how they can bring in more money, but are often starting to feel a little distressed that it's not going to happen for them and that they're going to be really stretched and their lifestyle is going to significantly change. We see it in the interest rate rises, the value of our dollar or our pound, the price of petrol, the cost of a loaf of gluten-free bread or a carton of almond milk. Can you tell that I have dietaries? So just this week, I actually had a moment of panic when I was looking at flight and accommodation prices for an overseas trip that I'm hoping to take later this year. And look, I mean, I feel really privileged that I get to say this, but with the exception of a couple of years over COVID, I have taken an overseas holiday for most years, for most of my adult life. In saying that, I value travel. It is one of my top priorities in life. It's one of my top values. And so I do direct funds there and I prioritize funds there over other things that I find to be less important for me. So the past 3 European summers, I have frolicked in the sea in Mallorca, in Ibiza, in the Algarve in Portugal. in Puglia, in Sicily, the Greek islands, and in my beloved Malta. This year, there is a new destination on the cards. But when I looked at the exchange rate, I literally felt parts of my body tighten. And it was like, okay, there's some work to do here. Because if you've listened to one of my last solo episodes on self concept shifts that changed my life, you will have heard that I didn't think I actually had money blocks for the longest time. But when it came down to it, I actually had some really major ones that were so deeply programmed and hidden. For a long time, I have believed that I am actually good with money. And I genuinely knew on a conscious level that money is abundant, it's available, and it doesn't have to be hard to get. But even with that belief, I noticed that I had an underlying story that for me, money would take time. It would be slow. It would require sacrifice and struggle. I knew money could come easily to others, but I didn't believe that that could be my immediate or short term reality. And I think that's the trap that a lot of us fall into. We think because we're not actively saying negative things about money, we must be in the clear. But money blocks are often so deeply wired into your identity and into your nervous system. They will show up in how you price your products or services, how you spend, and how you save, and whether you even feel safe receiving more. And I know that sounds like an interesting thing to say that people would have a problem receiving more, but it is so common. Now, I have been on my money unblocking journey. However, when my body tightened when I was looking at the cost of travel this year, I realized that I really do have work to do. Now, I'm not talking about, oh, I felt, a particular way because I really don't want to have to pay that money. It's more than that. So, of course, none of us want to pay more than we have to, especially if you're used to paying a particular amount for an airfare or for accommodation. That's normal. That's not what I'm talking about. But for me, because I have been doing this work, I know that there's a particular feeling that I get in my body. And that feeling is actually coming from a place of scarcity, from a place of lack, and not believing that it's going to come back to me with ease. So I just wanted to make that distinction. Because in the past, my behaviors showed very clearly that I had blocks, even though I didn't recognize them until more recently. So, for example, when I would go and pay for groceries or petrol, I would feel such a resistance energy in my body. Not because I was worried that it would decline or that I didn't have enough money in there, but because I didn't have faith that it would come back to me. I was operating from a place of lack. I was holding on to my money so tightly, I was gripping on for dear life. And I want to get into this more. But before I get ahead of myself, let's actually discuss what money blocks actually are. Okay, so money blocks are the subconscious beliefs, the emotional associations, and the identity patterns that shape your relationship with money, usually, again, without you recognizing it. Now, they're not always obvious. You might not be walking around saying, I hate money. In fact, you're probably not saying that. You're probably not saying out loud, I'll never be rich. Well, maybe you are. That's great because you're literally telling yourself exactly where the block is. But if you find yourself feeling uncomfortable receiving money, feeling guilty for wanting more, sabotaging opportunities that could bring more financial growth, or constantly swinging between a feast and famine cycle, chances are, my friend, you have money blocks running beneath the surface. Now, it's important to understand that money blocks usually aren't about money itself. They're about what money represents to you. Money might represent to you safety, success, power, freedom, validation. And whether your operating system believes you're allowed to have that is another story. So, for example, if you grew up hearing that money causes stress or arguments, you might associate wealth with disconnection, conflict, or even with pressure. You might then subconsciously believe that money always causes stress. Now, if you watched your parents struggle financially, you might then believe that you have to hustle nonstop just to stay afloat, even if your life circumstances have changed and even if they're different from what your parents were. You might subconsciously believe things like, it's hard for me to make money, or I can make money, but I can't keep it, or I always lose it. Now, if you are praised for being like a low maintenance kind of kid, you might now feel like asking for more means that you're too much or that you're just greedy. Money blocks live in the stories you've inherited through seeing and experiencing, the roles you've played, and the version of you that learnt to survive, not to necessarily go out there and thrive. Okay. So when we say money block, what we're really talking about is an internal rule you've absorbed about what's possible for you specifically and whether you're allowed to receive or to hold or to grow wealth with ease. But let me highlight those rules absolutely can be rewritten. And that is what we are going to do. We're going to do that in the second part of this series. All right, now let's talk about safety because this is where things can get a little bit sneaky. You can say you want more money, and you probably already have been. You can consciously believe that you are ready for abundance. But if your nervous system doesn't feel safe with more wealth, it will sabotage you without you even realizing it. Because this work, it's not just mental, it is often felt within our body as well. Like your body will literally respond. If you pay close enough attention, you might experience these types of body sensations. You might experience a tight chest when you think about raising your prices. You might feel an avoidance feeling when it comes time to check your bank account. Maybe you have a pit in your stomach. Maybe that feeling comes after you've made a big financial investment. Maybe you have a nervous energy around spending or receiving money. Now, you might interpret these sensations as anxiety or overthinking, but they're often your nervous system sending out a signal that this does not feel safe. So, what happens? You end up overgiving or undercharging, not asking for a pay rise or settling for a lower wage or salary instead of negotiating, forgetting, quote unquote, forgetting to follow up on invoices. Maybe you're avoiding financial planning. You're avoiding checking your bank account. You're hesitating paying your bills. It can also look like overspending. So as soon as you have money come in, you're quick to make it go back out again. It's not just a lack of discipline or strategy. It is your body trying to return to what feels familiar, even if what's familiar isn't what you actually want. But why does this happen? Oftentimes, somewhere along the way, your system might have learned that more money equals more pressure or more responsibility, more visibility, more risk, more judgment, or more chances to fail. Maybe you watched money cause stress or conflict in your childhood. Maybe you witnessed people change once they became wealthy, and that change wasn't necessarily for the better. Maybe success meant being envied or judged or isolated. So now, even if you're consciously chasing abundance and you're craving overflow and freedom, your subconscious is saying, let's not go there. It is absolutely not safe. It thinks it will cost you your peace, your relationships, your identity, and everything else in between. It is protecting you from abundance. Like that is literally what it is doing. Because to your nervous system, abundance might feel like exposure or like pressure or like danger. This is why mindset alone just isn't enough. And we focus on mindset, it's super important, but we absolutely need to focus on nervous system because working on your nervous system regulation and that sense of safety, it needs to happen so your body can hold what your mind says it wants. Because without safety, you'll keep finding ways to drop the ball or procrastinate or stay small, keep playing small, or blow everything up just as things start flowing. But all is not lost because safety can absolutely be built. And we will work on this in part two, like I said. You can teach your body that it is safe to have more, that it is safe to receive and to be seen in all your glory and in all of your success. And when you start creating safety around receiving and keeping money, that's when your whole relationship with wealth begins to shift. You start creating that internal safety and you stop pushing the abundance away and you start holding it with trust and with ease. So let's talk about this feeling, right? Because it is energy. And you know that I love to talk about energy because it literally influences everything. I have episodes dedicated to this. Even when you're doing all the right things on paper, the energy behind those things matter more than you think. You might be journaling, you might be working your butt off, you might be manifesting everything you possibly can. But if it's all coming from a place of gripping on really tightly or a place of panic or fear or urgency, that is scarcity energy. Scarcity energy sounds like, I need to do this work or else. If I don't make money this month, I'll fall behind. When is it going to happen for me already? It can feel like pressure in your chest, anxiety when you check your bank account, envy when you see other people succeed, or a never ending to do list that somehow never gets you ahead. Scarcity convinces you that your value is tied to output, that more equals better, that rest is dangerous, that if you're not constantly doing and hustling, you're falling behind. The thing is, though, you're not just manifesting from scarcity, you become a match for scarcity. And then money starts to feel further away, not because you're unworthy or lazy, but because you're reinforcing a belief system of lack with every single one of your actions. Even your attempts to call in more abundance can be driven by fear. Like, I want more because I don't feel safe where I am. That's not true abundance, right? Like, that is survival energy dressed up in manifestation language. Now, let's compare lack energy with abundance energy, because abundance energy feels very different and it can feel like, I trust that what's mine will find me. Money flows to me in unexpected ways. I don't chase, I align. It's a deep knowing that I am safe, that I am always resourced, that I am always supported. And even when things aren't perfect on the outside, abundance energy lets you act from a place of possibility and not from a place of panic. Now, I don't want you to think that I am living in some delusional land where I don't understand that a lot of us feel the weight of financial pressures. I get it. I face them myself. It is normal and human to have some intrusive thoughts or fear when you're in a place where money is tight or you're not sure when or how much your next pay will be. I get it. It's not about only ever being in a state where you have no fears and no apprehension, but it is holding the deep knowing and believing that you are safe to receive and hold wealth, that you are worthy, that it is easy, like all of these things. You need to have that as the deep knowing. And let me be clear, this state isn't a passive state. It's not about doing nothing. We're not sitting on our hands. It's about doing from a place of sufficiency rather than scarcity. You stop trying to prove your worth and you start really leaning into it. You just believe it. It's your normal state. You stop trying to control everything and you start allowing more ease and more flow. Shifting to abundance means asking, who do I become when I believe I'm already enough? And from that energy, money and opportunities and abundance and support, they all respond because you're no longer chasing, you're attracting. When your energy changes, your reality has no choice but to change too. Now, let's get to the bottom of why these blocks are even there in the first place. Because most of our money beliefs aren't actually ours. We didn't consciously choose them, they were shaped long before we even had a bank account ourselves or ever even earned our first dollar. Now, I'm going to invite you to take a moment to think about these questions. If you need to pause, please do so. Just think about the responses when I ask you these questions. Okay. What did you hear about money growing up? What was modeled to you in your household around money? Was there stress around money? Was it taboo to talk about money? Was it something that other people had, but not your family? Maybe you heard things like money doesn't grow on trees, super common one, or we can't afford that, or you have to work hard for every dollar you make. Rich people are greedy. Money is evil. That's for people like them not for people like us. Now, even if you don't consciously believe those things now, your inner child, the part of you that learned what was actually safe and normal and expected, might still be operating from that script. This is where your self concept starts to form, not just what you believe about money, but what you believe about yourself in relation to money. Things like, I'm just not good with finances. I always find a way to scrape by. I'm a saver, not an investor. It'll take me years to get ahead. You might consciously believe money is abundant and easy to make, but if your identity still sees yourself as someone who struggles or as someone who always just gets by, there's a big money mismatch, my friends. And speaking from experience, that mismatch creates resistance. It's like saying, I want to fly first class while still packing carry on for an economy flight. Your nervous system, your habits, and your expectations, they are all wired for different outcomes than the one that you actually say you want. That's why so many affirmations and strategies fail to get you the results that you truly want, because you're trying to do abundance from a place of lack in your identity. Now, I know you love the practical tips and relatable examples in these solo episodes, so let's get super practical. Here are a few signs that you might be subconsciously pushing money away, even though you are sitting there saying that you want more of it. Okay, so you feel guilty for making or spending money. You maybe downplay your income. You feel bad for raising your prices or justify every purchase. Guilt and shame are signs your nervous system doesn't feel safe having or enjoying money. Maybe you overwork and under-earn. You stay busy, but the money doesn't reflect your effort. Subconsciously, you might equate exhaustion with worthiness or fear judgment if things become too easy. Maybe you avoid managing your finances. You don't check your bank account. You delay opening your bills, or you put off budgeting that you know is really necessary for your circumstances. Avoidance is a nervous system protection response. If it feels overwhelming or unsafe, you'll disconnect. You undercharge or stay in underpaid roles, even when you know your value. It might almost feel impossible to raise your rates or even ask for more. That is not a pricing problem. It's an identity problem. Maybe you have a tendency to self sabotage right before a new financial level, right when things are finally clicking. Maybe it's a new client coming in, a pay rise, unexpected income. Something inside you panics. You overspend, you procrastinate, you get sick, you shut down. It's not logical, it is a safety mechanism. So, do any part of these resonate? If so, I want you to know that it most likely isn't because you lack discipline. It's likely not because you're lazy or irresponsible. It's likely because your internal set point for making money, for success, and for safety is misaligned with your next level. This isn't about strategy, it is about your identity and your energy. And when you start addressing your beliefs and your nervous system wiring, your financial reality will catch up. Okay, we have definitely covered a lot today. And next week, I'll be back with part two, where I'll walk you through what to actually do about these money blocks and how to begin rewiring them for good. But between now and then, I have an activity that I really want you to try because it will mean you get a lot more out of next week's episode. So, this week, I invite you to start noticing the little moments that involve money in your day to day life. So take note anytime you pay for a product or service, see someone showing off their money or wealth in person or online. So maybe that's on social media. I want you to think of that 22-year-old influencer who appears to be flying around the world business class, driving her fancy car, having high income months. Do you roll your eyes? Does she make you cringe? Do you believe she was able to create wealth to support that kind of lifestyle? Why? Why not? I want you to take note when you hear other people talk about money. Take note when you check your bank account or when you think about checking your bank account, when you have to make a financial decision, when you have to have a conversation about finances or money, when you have to tap your card at the supermarket or at the petrol station. In these instances, I want you to pause and ask yourself, what thoughts, feelings, and reactions come up for me? Now, it's really important that you approach this with curiosity and just to seek awareness about the situation. Absolutely no judgment. I want you to write them down in a notebook or in the Notes app on your phone. I always encourage my clients to do this when we do activities like this. The Notes app is really handy because you can write in it wherever you are. And I want you to notice any patterns because these moments are your clues. They'll help you see where you might still be carrying blocks and fears and outdated beliefs. And then we can actually start to rewire them because awareness is always the first step to change. I always say when we shine a light on these beliefs and stories, we already start to disempower them. All right, my friends, as always, if you found this episode useful or enjoyable, please like it and share it with someone who you believe will benefit from it. We're talking about money. We all have these money blocks that we need to get rid of. I'm sure you know someone that would really benefit from this conversation. All right, good luck with your activity this week, and I look forward to seeing you for part 2.